Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man.
Hey, welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Pakulski, and today we're going to dive into superfoods. I took a massive fascination with superfoods really around the time when I started this journey into health and trying to understand really what a superfood was, where they came from, and what advantages they offered me. So I started searching around, and there's a very limited number of foods that are classified as superfoods. And then I came across this guy who called himself or was known as the Superfood Hunter. And so I started doing some research, and this guy's extremely bright, and he effectively lives and fuels his body off of superfoods, which is very, very interesting. He tells us a lot about the intricate benefits and how superfood works, how he came across this life of becoming the superfood hunter, and this one new superfood that he's just discovered that is new to North America that may be the most interesting one of all thus far. So I've really enjoyed this conversation with Darin Olien, and I hope you guys do too. You're going to want to listen right to the end because he's going to hook us up with some really sweet information. And as I said, the newest superfood that you may not have heard of. Enjoy the show. Man, you're living in Malibu, traveling the world, finding awesome food, and feeding your body like a superhuman.
It seems as though.
How did it begin? It's all the external appearance, right? It's all the facade.
No. It's
I'm just kidding.
How did it begin? Literally, I think professionally it began when I got hurt playing college football.
Where'd you go?
And it was Augsburg College in Minneapolis.
Yep.
And starting fullback, linebacker came down, crunched my lower back. I couldn't get on the field again. So that whole thing just sent me spinning in terms of, why don't I study the thing that I am interested in? And that's the body and nutrition and everything. So I changed my major, changed schools to the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, and started studying physiology, kinesiology, nutrition, all of that stuff. And then that's when kind of the at least that realization that I am so fascinated by this thing that we still can't figure out, this body and our relationship with food. And
yeah, it's going to be a long time before we figure it out. I think we're just starting to open up what we don't know.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the beautiful thing. Like I can live for the rest of my life and continue to be inspired and learn about, how we are walking around and how we can shovel in things and put in our mouth, and somehow it produces energy that was essentially originally from this nuclear reactor of a sun blasting us on a plasma reactor that is the Earth. And somehow in that exchange, photosynthetic organisms showed up and basically capturing the energy, and us being able to eat that allows us to function. It's kind of like when you really start to get what the hell is going on, it's so awe-inspiring and mind-blowing that to distill it down into a perfect thing, a perfect way, a perfect food, is just utterly ridiculous because there's too much going on.
Sure, but I'm sure you're the same, man. I get to wake up every day and be inspired and still be have a sense of awe about something I learned today or something I learned yesterday, and that's the beauty of it, man. Is I get to meet people like yourself who are traveling the world doing amazing stuff, and we get to talk about cool things and learn something new and truly inspire the whole world, man, which is pretty freaking awesome.
Incredible. Because what else are we here
I'm grateful for you for being here, man. Yeah. And I'm grateful for what you're doing, man. So like you've built this tribe, I guess you built this community around creating a super life. And that's why I was drawn to you. I've actually been following you for quite some time. Just, it started, who's this dude looking for all these superfoods and what are these really cool things he's finding? And then I realized there's much more. You're not just kind of like the hunter. You're also the guy who's leading the conversation around, how do we fuel this amazing life that we have?
Yeah. Yeah. It's always been, certainly saying, hey, I superfood hunt, that's just kind of a thing, that a title that someone gave me, and it's easy to start a conversation and it creates some curiosity, but underneath it all, and really where SuperLife, the idea came from, is really underneath it all. I hope that, and I like to support that which is helping people live a higher functioning, optimal, happy, disease-free, inspired living, passionate, fueled life. I mean, and that's really where I needed the knowledge and the nutrient density and the said superfoods or botanicals because of my own necessary requirements, and really fueling kind of how I started, kind of being premature in, being 3.5 pounds, being born, and kind of the first signaling of my life was, this is a very fragile and vulnerable life we're living, at least through the body. And so that kind of coupled with kind of the Midwestern work ethic, I was like, okay, diversity, okay, work harder, okay, challenges, figure it out. So that's really where I started gaining the momentum of feeling myself in my own necessity and my own need and my own desire. And then also through further diversity, getting hurt playing football and all these things. Now how can I professionally do it? And then really losing my father to alcoholism in 2005, really just kind of, that was the nitrous oxide button in the 69 Chevelle. That was really, that was the real last push that I was like, okay, it's time to, instead of just looking around and gathering information and accessing cool things and finding not only new cultures, but foods and uses of them, it's now time to kind of put it in the world. And so to this day, it's not necessarily the cornerstone of all that I do is superfood hunt. The superfood hunting is really the support vehicle for people to not kind of dredge around this body and live a life limited to the degree at which their body is able to respond. So that's what that's about, and that's what SuperLife's about.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your background. It's pretty unique. Or at least very interesting. It's exercise phys and nutrition, and then you got a master's in psychology. That's kind of like my background. I didn't do a master's in psychology, but as soon as I was done with school and I did a professional bodybuilding career, but during that career, my only infatuation was psychology and starting to understand. You understand this body piece, and you kind of like, oh, this is important, but it's all governed by this mind piece. So you're starting to put these pieces together. Yeah. As far as fueling a healthy, vibrant life. And I love the way you said that. It's basically like you're limited by what your body can kind of do, right? You're limited by your body's limitations as far as if you want to perform some cool activities. As far as fueling a healthy life, what do you talk about in the SuperLife, the simple principles that people need to execute on to live a healthy, vibrant life?
Yeah, it is. It's foundational stuff, right? That's never going to go away. It's never going to, the nuances of it will change, but ultimately those pillars are, whole food. And I make the argument of, the nutrient density, call them superfoods, call it what you want, but the food choices that are housing the density of nutrients in the best way that we can, which is part of the hunting side of it, trying to procure some of the great botanicals around the world to make sure that they still have the constituents that are required from the thousands of years that they've been used, so that when we consume them, they can support what they're meant to do. And certainly sleep is a huge thing. You can't take anything that's going to counteract the necessary shutdown and rebuilding and repairing and replenishing that sleep can give you. And then as basic as water. I've spent a lot of time digging into, being blown away by water, not only from the aspect of how it is supposed to be as a vortated, energetically vibrant, electron producing carrier, supporter, a conductor, protector of the body, but where are we now in the modern world? So it's like everything we talk about, at least from a broad perspective, has to be kind of put against the reality of where we're living right now. So that's really what I wanted to. So yes, at the end of the day, wouldn't it be great if we all had access to a fresh spring that wasn't contaminated by PCBs and heavy metals and pharmaceutical drugs and all of that stuff? Wouldn't that be great? But the reality is that even that water coming out of our taps are contaminated and making up a word here, signaturized, like they have signatures and imprints from all kinds of things. So water's a big deal. Obviously, it doesn't need to be that complex, but for the most part, deconstructing water so that we can reconstruct it in a way that's receptive on a cellular level to the body. And then really understanding, like, the fascination 15 years ago was really kind of this alchemy that the body lives in, and by way of what we're eating, what state of that food we're consuming, dictates many things. So is it raw? Is it fermented? Is it cooked? Is it soaked? Is it fried? Is it boiled? Is it extracted? All of these things change the conversation of any one food. So the preparation of food changes the argument that some people have about food and others don't. Some people have about botanicals, or this thing's bad for you and that thing's bad for you. I think the more I know, the more I learn. I can hardly give an individual recommendation on what to eat. It's really difficult because I have no idea metabolically what's going on with that human being.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's so much value and beauty in that, because what we find is the experts that we interview are always the ones that say, I don't know. Exactly what you just said right there. Like, well, I'm not really sure. And it's the ones who say, yeah, you need to do this, that you got to watch out for, right? Like, so that's right. The beauty of it is we don't know. And there's a few basic things, like you spoke about sleep and good hot quality foods and water. And I'd love to go down the conversation of water, because it's such an important piece that we neglect, and we just take for granted, and we're like, oh, I just need to drink water. And I don't think it's that simple. Kind of at your lead, let's go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with water. I'd like to just know what water you're doing. You're living in Malibu, right? You're in Malibu right now?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess the water supply in Malibu is not awesome. It's probably California, county or LA County kind of thing. What are you doing to ignite your water so it's, a life force again?
Yeah. So I have, luckily in the property that I'm on, I do have regular municipal water supply, and I also have well water. So it's great. I have two forms of that, but all water coming in the house is filtered, a 3-stage filter, and then also a vortator. So some of the great teachers in my life have always been, it's all fun and game when you can put on a lab coat and try to recreate something to therefore get and extract information. But if you can observe nature, then that is the greatest teacher. So vortating water, or creating a way that water can basically increase its surface area and electrical conduction, and get its energy back, is a good idea. So I filter water. It's vortated. It has a higher.
Is that similar to structured water? Is that like just creating more of a negative charge?
Exactly. So it's a structuring of water for sure. And like I said, water, you have to deconstruct it to reconstruct it. So you do have to filter it. You have to get out these things and then restructure it again. And restructuring is many different ways. Obviously, I mean, any good water scientist who's willing to actually look beyond the H2O will quickly see that water itself as an entity kind of lives closer to quantum physics than it does operating in this kind of reality. So it's more of a miracle than just this thing that we just take for granted. It's when you see surface tension, it doesn't make sense to anybody. They don't know how, if you put something on a certain weight, that the molecules in the water will actually support. It's why some animals can run across the water. There's what's called Dr. Gerald Pollack did some great work on the exclusion zone of water, kind of the fourth phase of water.
I just talked to Gerald Pollack, and I don't know if you're interested in that stuff. Talking about this whole quantum physics angle, his newest area of study is the reality that he thinks within the next 3 years we are going to be using water to store information like a hard drive, which is that speaks to its ability to store and transfer information like the quantum field, right?
Totally, and that's it makes me just ecstatically happy to hear that, because it's that's where it's going. I mean, that's we're already looking at not to go down these rabbit holes, but we're already looking at systems that are creating themselves to disrupt the systems that don't work. You look at cryptocurrency, you looked at blockchain, you look at other things that are looking for expressions that are not held in old ways of thinking and old ways of systems. And if Gerald's doing that, then that is just all roads lead to that anyway, because they know that the signature and the information and the conduction and the reception of information, we already are seeing that. So, I'll be the first to invest in the first water hard drive.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing, right? If you think about it, so if water can store information, is there information stored in water now from the past that we could look into the past? We could look at, the whole Akashic record conversation where we're like, hey man, maybe there's something else out there that holds information that we're not aware of, like the air. Who knows?
100%. Well, is any energy ever lost? Right. So it's just transmutating, transferring, shifting, moving, morphing, building on, contributing to. It's that's why water's so interesting, because it's kind of like the physical manifestation of. It's almost like closer to that invisible world that we're intending into, right? That Dr. Braden talks about, and Dr. Dispenza, right? Yep. They talk about the field effect of not only your thought forms and everything else, but also your electromagnetic field of your physical being, your heart space, that is just. That's just the best, conversations ever, because you're then it makes, and I would imagine it also makes people very uncomfortable to hear the level to which we have, for lack of a better phrase, we have responsibility, or that our lives, to the degree at which we're intending it consciously, has an infinite effect and a field effect of anything and everyone around us. So anyway, yeah, water. I mean, it's a celestial body that we get to participate in, and so anyway, back to So then I filter it, I reverse osmosis the water, and then I build it back up again. And so I've worked with some good water scientists, Dr. Dick Willert up in Santa Barbara. He's come in and installed devices and high ionic potential devices in my water and tested it, and he was proving that the material, say vitamin C or whatever said material you're bringing into that water, that now exponentially you're turning the absorption rate up by multiples of times. And so you have this relationship with water that is doing so many things. So, like we were talking about.
That's a really fascinating thing that I never considered, right? As you walk down this path of understanding the fourth phase of water, the structured water, or the water, the type of water you put in your house, is that maybe a factor in the absorbability of the nutrients in our food? As you attach them to something with has a negative charge, which is probably what you're getting in your water, you attach it and submerge it in there, and maybe it gets better ability to cross the cellular membrane. That's really, I've never gone down that rabbit hole. Is that what he's speculating?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he was proving it in his lab research, whether it's peer reviewed or not. Is another whole, do you need to do that when you've proven it? That's a whole nother conversation. But
that's important because we're all having these conversations around eating superfoods, and what if we're just killing any of the nutrients in our food just because we're destroying the negative charge, right? We're taking away the negative charge, giving ourselves crappy, uncharged water. You'll go down that rabbit hole for days. You talked about not losing energy. Tell me about your belief around food and having energy. So we have people who talk about, every food has its energy signature. Certain foods vibrate high. When you cook it, it maybe changes the vibrations. Is that something you believe in strongly?
100%. I mean, we do know that fresh food in the optimal times of ripening, and you can talk about biodynamic farming, permaculture, how that's completely based in planetary alignments when not only the earth is pulsating, but also the plants are moving and actually moving nutrients in and out of the top area of the plant, for example. So there's times when the plant can receive water when you're watering it better. There's times when the soil can receive water better based on a million billions of microorganisms. But then also when you harvest. So when are those active constituents more available? And what part of the day is best when you pick those things? So then as you take that whole thing, which is a massive topic, and then you go, okay, that intersection of how am I consuming this thing? What state am I in? Because think about it, that nearly 10% of all Americans, what is that, 30 million people, don't even drink an ounce of water a day.
Really?
Right? Yeah. It's actually as 2015, it was 7%. But as it relates to chronically dehydrated, you're over 90% people walking around. So imagine imagine if you want to be a grape and you're walking around as a raisin, and you want to have the vibrancy and the ability of a grape, but you're a raisin, and you cannot be a grape when you've created yourself as a raisin.
Right.
So, and then at the core of dehydration, certainly all chronic disease that they've seen, dehydration is a part of it. And certainly fatigue is the number one dehydrative side effect. So you're walking around with, I'm tired, so I'm reaching for the coffee, the Red Bull, the stimulant to get me to my next meeting so that I can make my money, but I'm stressed out of my mind. And when it's stressed out of my mind, my body requires more water and I don't have it. So I'm stealing it from other parts of the body. Therefore, my skin and my brain and all of these things are severely affected. And then you think about kids going to school and their functionality in school. I mean, there's research, and I forget the study, but there's 6 to 12 ounces of water before class increases kids' retention by 20-30%.
Yeah.
So again, we all can start our day with just by the dehydrative effect of sleeping, and start our day with some fresh, vibrant water, and it can change your life just by that simple habit every day.
I want to know the daily routines and the daily nutritional habits of the guy who's living the super life.
Here, let me go ask him. He's a furry creature. His name's Chaga, and he's a German Shepherd.
And you named him after a mushroom, man. I love it.
I did. I had to. He looked too much like a wild chaga mushroom.
Are you a fan of chaga mushroom?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure. Yeah.
Tell me about that, because I've used it, but I'm curious to hear from someone who's an expert in the field.
Yeah. Well, the chaga is, from an ethnobotanist point of view, it's culturally one of the most revered. So from the Ming Dynasty to Japan to the Vikings to here in the northern climates of America to Alaska to Russia, we have some heavyweights in the human race that have been using chaga mushrooms. So chaga is, some people say, as the king of mushrooms, and got some of the highest antioxidant rating of any food in the world. And obviously through free radical damage and stress, we're requiring biologically available antioxidants all the time. And then it's got some constituents that are really interesting as it relates to vitamin D, melanin, things like that. So supporting the natural melanin in the skin seems to be a relationship between having high amounts of melanin and the body's ability to have the chemistry in the skin to create more vitamin D. And of course, vitamin D is at the root of our immune system. So yeah, there's a lot of, and the other side facts are the fact that they've found mycelium in the substratosphere. Like, it's able to kind of thrive in areas that are, so that whole fungal kingdom is something that has some benefits that I think we barely even know at this point. So chaga is one of those cornerstones. It's one that you can consume every day. There's no buildup of any known compounds and butylenic acids or anything like that. So it's a powerful mushroom, and it's powerful enough to name your dog after it. So.
Hey, I interrupt the podcast to bring you a message about blueberries. You guys know my infatuation with blueberries is real. Why? Massive brain benefits from the polyphenols, antioxidants, nitric oxide benefits, so many things about berries in general that I absolutely love, and I make them a consistent part of my day-to-day life. Here's the problem. eating as many blueberries as you need to see a benefit is very, very expensive. Looking around $5 to $6 per serving when I buy them fresh, and even when I buy them frozen, it's still in the range of $4 to $5 for the size of serving that I'm after, which is somewhere in the range of 2 cups per serving, and I usually have that about twice a day. So what I've started doing, probably for the last 6 months, is after every workout, I'm consuming at least 2 servings of Organifi Red. So as you guys have heard, my friend Drew Canoli started this business, Organifi, and he's doing an incredible job sourcing really high-quality ingredients and putting them into convenient servings that allow you to easily access superfoods and amazing nutrients. So Drew has so graciously offered to give all of the Muscle Intelligence listeners or the Muscle Expert podcast listeners 20% off anything you get from Organifi. But you got to act now because that's not going to last forever. You can use the code Muscle Intelligence when you go to Organifi.com to get 20% off your entire order. And I think you're awesome, and Drew does too. So enjoy the rest of the show. So coming back to, you obviously, for the viewer, not watching the podcast but listening, Darin looks like the typical, 30-year-old California surfer. He's got the bleach blonde hair, very, very obviously athletic, fit-looking guy, man. Tell me about your life, man. How do you maintain your optimal health?
Yeah. Well, it's, certain patterns that I stick to, like brushing my teeth. I sleep 8 hours a day. I go to sleep at 8. Basically, I get up at between 3:30 and 4. I drink my activated hydrogen water. I make my tinctures and teas, and then do a series of breath work.
Don't just gloss over those teas, man. Like, come on, give me some goods there, man. This is what we're after here.
Right. Yeah. So
does it vary, or do you have one that's kind of your go-to?
Yeah, it varies a little bit. But there's certainly some cornerstones. Schizandra is one of the great adaptogens of our time. One of the great longest used adaptogens from traditional Chinese medicine. It's a great base because it can accentuate other herbs. And chaga, reishi, cordyceps. There's a variety of kind of interchanging that goes on in there. Lion's mane. I love a good stimulant. I'm not a coffee person. I think I know too much about the seed of coffee and the other detrimental effects. So I just go for some other stuff. So guarana is a favorite stimulant from Brazil. And I've spent obviously a lot of time in Brazil. And then, certain ginsengs, I'll use, and I love me 100% cacao. So, the epicatechins in cacao, the dopamine enhancers in cacao, like I'm a huge, and it's in cacao. People don't realize cacao is a fermented food. So that with a little, splash of coconut powder, and I mix something up like that. And then that kind of propels me into my morning routine of, I have this device called a David Data machine. So it's brain entrainment stuff, with sound and light, and that will, get me, and I'll do that while I'm doing breath work. So originally I've always done Wim Hof stuff. And now I'm doing a lot of nose breathing, like Patrick McEwen's work with
we just released him on the podcast
event.
Yesterday.
Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's the best, and we're potentially going to do some stuff together. So that stuff is just inherent, and I can't even work out without nose breathing now. It's just everything's shifted.
Yep.
It's just,
I'm the same way.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like once that clicks in, you can't
I tell everybody in my gym,
it.
I have a gym here in Tampa, and everybody is breathing through their mouth. I yell at them. I'm like, close your mouth. Your mouth is for speaking. I say your mouth is for yelling profanities at your training partner. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Use it wisely, but not for breathing. So breath work and meditation, then I'll just go right into kind of stream of consciousness writing, who I am, what I want, where I'm going, what fuels me, what gratitude is around me. And that inevitably leads me down the path of the projects that I'm going into and doing and procuring and creating. So that's essentially my morning. And then I'll move right into a workout from there. And I have a group of nutballs and misfits that I've been working out for a decade, doing all kinds of functional and ridiculous underwater crazy shit. That
are you working out with Laird and Reese?
Yeah, so Laird and Gabby.
Yeah.
So I've been working out with them for the last 10 years, and it's great now because they've kind of packaged something that we've been doing for a long time, and now they're kind of showing and teaching and training through XPT, extreme. I think they're extreme performance training, and showing of course, then the ice and the heat and the underwater breath stuff and that training. And so we never know what we're going to get when we show up, but it certainly is. It's
every day.
Yeah. Every day. Yeah. Maybe Sunday we just don't. It depends. If we blasted ourselves one day, then, like the other day, we breathed for 2 hours and we were out of our freaking minds and just kind of a recovery day. And then, we'll bring a badass yoga teacher in once a week. And then we're pool training 3 times a week. And, exploring different kind of things within that capsule. And really kind of probably the biggest benefit to that whole core of crazy guys that show up every day is just the community. We love each other. We support each other. We're there for each other. And kind of the side benefit is we get to work out, and as long as you show up
So what was this morning's workout?
We actually started in a 230 degree sauna, and then we jumped into.
That's not warm. Yeah, that's hot.
That's really hot.
How long did you stay in there?
20 minutes. And then we did actually some water carries. So we had buckets of water, and we all nose breathing, of course, and we did laps around this area until we couldn't hold on to the freaking things anymore. And then some breath hold squats, do a bunch of and then exhale everything on an exhale and try to do as many squats as possible with weight. And then we did some heavy walking lunges, like 120 steps, with probably like 90 pounds, which adds up. And then we did a couple rounds of that and a few other things. And then we jumped back in the sauna to the point of being very uncomfortable. And then we came back out and did it again, and then back in and back out. Like it was just, and then we ended up breathing at the end and did a full, because we were so toast because you can't recover when your body's already from the workout so hot. You go in and all that heat shock just sends you over the moon. And so then we got out of there and we ended up doing about 20 minutes of breathing, and we were all like, you might as well slipped us DMT at that point. We were all like feeling good. So
now, is that something that adds to your energy for the rest of the day, or do you find by that point you're pretty exhausted? Because you have workouts that can contribute and some that can really just pull it all out of you.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I think on average, there's probably one workout a day or one workout a week that can completely whack me out, and I can't even. But we can't do that all the time, like that. And we just kind of monitor as a group and then as individuals where we're at, because you don't want to always ride that high stress, but we're challenging ourselves, but it just may not be
a different way,
kind of from that amp point of view. Mm-hmm. It's Because as you know, with the breath work, there's a part of you that even though you might be doing it under load, there's a parasympathetic side to it on the recovery that is interesting. So you're not always just staying on this sympathetic kind of burn. You down regulate, and I think that zone is just incredible in terms of recovery.
They say that that's one of the greatest indicators of a true athlete is someone who comes out of sympathetic as quickly as possible and back into parasympathetic. And you guys are effectively training your nervous system's ability to do that.
Yeah. It's really fun. I mean, again, I was always kind of a person that would work out by themselves because I couldn't really find. Aside from, buddies back in the day who played, professional football and, there was a really good intention and they were really willing to kind of go for it. Aside from that, a few workout partners over the years, but at the end of the day, it took me a while to find a group that was really make it interesting, but also make it challenging. And that's, or else I get too bored and I'm like, I'll create some crazy shit on my own. But so far we're having a blast. So,
man, I think you and I would be good workout partners. That's pretty much what my life looks like. It's usually trying to find some cruel and unusual punishment for myself or my training partners. Yeah. Right now I'm training a guy for Olympia. So it's kind of gone back to the old bodybuilding style, but I love training what you guys are doing, man. Like the most, abnormal, atypical challenges to your body and your mind and your aerobic system. That stuff's awesome. It's exciting, right?
Yeah. Well, anytime you're on this side of the country, you're welcome to come over and we'll throw you in the pool and have a challenge.
That's what I was gonna say. You guys better have a big lifeguard around. Pull me out of the bottom of the pool.
Exactly. We've got some beef around. Don't worry.
Nice. Now, you finish this intense workout, then do you eat? Do you wait a while? What's the routine?
Yeah, I'll refuel with a superfood smoothie. A formula I made for Beachbody. I usually throw in. I'm playing with some new spirulina right now. Company's created this closed circuit freshwater, frozen fresh spirulina. So it's not even a supplement anymore. It's actually food. So I've been playing with that in terms of and seeing the ability to recover from that. And then, playing with, and then I'm a big, I love fruit. So blueberries, bananas, especially after a workout with a botanical blend, is I'll consume. And we also know that through research, blueberries, when consistently consumed, turn on the high functioning totipotent stem cells. So like 30 days of consuming a couple of blueberries turns on totipotent stem cells by over 6 times endogenously in the body. So, things like that is just a kind of it's just that kind of stuff is what continues to just excite me when you find out simple things that people can do over time, because it's like if you have a bad habit and you stay on that bad habit and you start in America, let's say, and your bad habit is a trajectory, if you're intending to hit Australia, that bad habit will take you completely off your path.
Absolutely.
And that over time generates a result. And the same thing on the other side. So, that's the other thing too. People always like, oh my God, I could never eat like you. And this, it's like, we never showed up this way.
Right.
We've developed our habits. And now, I don't know about you, but I don't spend a lot of time worrying about or really thinking about. I'm just automated. If I'm traveling, I know where to go, or I'm going to go to this market. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm not really consumed by it from what people think I am. I've got these things set up in my habits that I'd like to do that, as opposed to rehabilitating myself from bad habits that are essentially going to affect me.
So I'm kind of living a different reality than you. I've spent 20 years as a professional bodybuilder, so I still have that unconscious paradigm, right? You've created the unconscious paradigm around superfoods and, fueling your body, where I've created the unconscious paradigm around eating to be the biggest human being on the planet. So I have to be so conscious. Man, I'd love to be able to change my paradigm to make it around, superfoods. Because this is why I was so excited to have you on the show, man, is I want to be able to eat like that. I don't want to be attached to any type of need. And I'm not. I'm very good with being cerebral about it, being conscious about it. But I do find myself when I become unconscious, when I become too hungry, I will go back to the old, like, I need to eat protein. I need to eat these, certain foods that are, the typical bodybuilding foods. Do you eat meat? Or are you vegetarian?
I don't. I haven't eaten meat, fish, dairy, eggs for over a decade or more at this point. And it was really out of that experiment. So as I was training and as I was learning more, I was just like, wow, if meat essentially is a bioaccumulation of really at one point a plant, and I'm being exposed to all these great plants, then why not just eliminate the middleman and give this a try and try to find the great nutrient density plants? And okay, I'm going to do that. So I did that, and then I increased my workload. So I started working out twice a day just to really put it to the test. And what I was finding is I was recovering and able to not only respond to double the workouts, but also feeling better. So I just haven't went back since. And so it's funny because we all, I think, born in 1970, influenced by the bodybuilding culture as a 16-year-old kid. Arnold was a big influence and all the guys there. And, I too came from that, okay, I'm playing college football. I'm a fullback. I'm the smallest fullback at 200 pounds in the conference. I got to get more. I got to eat more. I got to do all that stuff. So I was being influenced by that. And at a certain point I was like, well, quality over quantity, because we're really talking about cellular nutrients. We're really talking about the smallest, because what does a body have to do anyway? It has to break it all down so that it can reconstruct it based on the signaling of DNA, RNA, and whatever amino acids and proteins and repair and essential fatty acids and all that stuff. It needs to break it all down. And if we're consumed by the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats without taking into consideration the freshness, the wholeness, the vitality of the food, then we're at a complete disservice to our body. So I just eventually made that shift and going, okay, it's not about quantity. But I guess it is about quantity. It's about quantity of micronutrients. As opposed to macronutrients. So I don't eat. I mean, I still stay at a very high level. I don't think any of the guys that I work out with don't eat meat. Well, I mean, I know they eat meat, but I know that I push them. Yeah, and I know that, you know what I mean. I'm not falling by the wayside by any means. And I'm as strong, I wasn't, I'm basically, from a functional standpoint, I'm stronger than I was when I played football. If I could do it all, if I could throw a helmet on right now, I would probably go back on the field and smack some people.
Except that brain is too valuable now, right? We realize that in our wisdom. So coming back around to some of these daily habits that you're executing on, and what some of the superfoods that you're consuming daily. Like, if I want to eat and live like Darin, what do I got to do?
Yeah. Well, again, water is key. I eat Flintstone size multi-leaf salad every day. I have handfuls of this great new super nut I found. I can't eat a salad without the bloody stuff. So the Baruka nuts.
I love those things. I ate them for the first time. They're so good at KetoCon, and I was like, I got some for my family. I'm like, these are just the best things ever.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And again, so from a micronutrient standpoint, we have biodynamic farms nearby, so I know where all the fresh vegetables we get it that morning. So for me, I'm getting fresh leafy greens every day, and then handfuls of Baruka nuts, and then maybe rice cakes, avocados, that kind of thing. And that's kind of my lunch. Like, it's just dense with nutrients and it's so satisfying. And then again, that's after the smoothie that I've had. And then, maybe I'll make another elixir or a mushroom blend, or even if I need some pick me up or matcha, I'll have matcha tea in the afternoon, but that's probably once a week. And then dinner, what is it like? I mean, it's mostly like some sort of medley of something. Like, I can cook and I can change. Like I have a vegan pizza that I've created for buddies who eat meat, and I've literally, their quotes, not mine, it's the best pizza they've ever had.
Wow.
So, I love taste and I love fresh and I love all that stuff. So, making myself a burrito or like rice and beans and salsa and avocado and tempeh and all of that stuff, a big bowl of that at night or something like that with greens or spinach, or like that's kind of something like that every day. And so I kind of eat twice a day with a smoothie. That's basically it. And if I feel like I need more, I just eat more of the same stuff.
Right.
So I don't worry about, I don't spend time calculating my food. Like, that was like so 1990.
I'm with you, man. And I always make the joke that I'm a vegetarian who eats meat. So I'd say 80% of the bulk of my food comes from vegetables and berries. And I'll eat small amounts of meat, man. That's kind of, and the amount of meat varies based on my necessity for recovering from my training. And that's, so I'm trying to follow in your footsteps, man. I'm just looking for more superfoods. I think the accessibility in Malibu is a little bit better than where I am here in Tampa.
Well, certainly from the fresh perspective, absolutely. I mean, and it may take some effort to find that local stuff. And listen, if anyone can create their own garden, that's always your best.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it's something powerful about creating your own food, and the microorganisms that you live in and around are a part of your food, and there's something to that in terms of the microbiome, in terms of your symbiosis with your environment. Super important, for sure.
Tell me about Baruka nuts. Other than being the best tasting things on the planet, my podcast manager sitting beside me when we first found him at KetoCon, at PaleoFX, we're like, well, how do we get this in bulk? Where do they come from?
I know. They come from the Cerrado of Brazil and Bolivia. So it's this kind of Amazonian savanna that is south of the Amazon in Brazil. And it comprises of a landmass that's about 3 states of Texas. So it's almost half of the United States. So it's a massive area. And the nuts come from the Baruka tree, which is a precious tree in that ecosystem. Unfortunately, the deforestation is happening at a rate that we've never seen almost any biome. So in the last 40 years, the savanna or the Cerrado of Brazil has been destroyed by 50 to 70%. So how this came about was I was in Brazil for other reasons on another trip in the Amazonian side, looking at palm fruits and things like that. And I think it was from that trip, and people saw it on social media and everything. So this Brazilian reached out to me and he said, "You ever heard of the Baru nut?" And I was like, "No," with a smile, right? And so he sent me some along with some research, and I was like you, I tasted it, and I'm like going, okay, what is this? Because there's many
too good to be true.
Yeah, there's many things that go on in terms of like looking at things. I have lists of 50 different superfoods or botanicals that I would love to see in the market, but there's limitations in a variety of different ways. And so when I tasted it, the first thing I thought was there's no barrier to entry from an American palate, because somewhere in there it tastes kind of unique, but yet it's very characteristic of something you've tasted, whether that be an almond or a peanut or a combination thereof. Or So as a entrepreneur person, I'm looking at the micronutrients, and of course, from this whole conversation, that's going to get my attention. So when you have antioxidants that are 374% more than almonds, when you have 3 times the fiber of any nut, when you have a complete protein, very high protein, when you have a third less calories, you're now coming into this per bite. You're coming into this nutrient density that we've never seen in a nut. And then on top of it, it's so bloody good. So then the third ring to this whole thing, or actually third and fourth, is the environmental impact of bringing attention and value back to the land so that the people would be less likely to wipe it out for money. And then fourthly, it gives that economy back to the indigenous people that live all throughout this huge landmass. So it was just kind of, as you can imagine, 15 years of doing this stuff, when you see something kind of line up in all of those categories, I could not, even though I didn't have the bandwidth at the time when he brought it up, I was strapped in so many different ways. I didn't think I would be able to help out very much. But the first thing I did was jump on a plane because I didn't sign any deal with them until I was to see the situation. So as a superfood hunter, it's not hunting, it's relationships. It's seeing what's really possible, and also seeing quality, what's possible in the quality of it, and will those indigenous systems be able to be influenced enough to be able to be safe? Is there enough supply? Is there enough of these trees and enough of that fruit that naturally fall to even make this a business? And how many of these actually now exist? So all of that happens by way of, I would probably say, 40 meetings over the last 3 years. Everyone from the top PhD researchers who've studied anything about the tree to chiefs who are the chief of the community, of the indigenous people, of elders in the communities who lead these things. So for me, one of the greatest things in the world is for me to hear how much you like them and how much I know they're giving to you from a nutrient standpoint. And then when I can also say, every time you eat those, it's supporting an incredible, necessary ecosystem, and it's creating value back to those indigenous people. At this point in my career, that's one of the greatest things ever.
Are they a common nut in Brazil? Is that something that's like, we eat peanuts and almonds here?
That's a great question. The answer is no. So the infrastructure to understand and control and create ways of collecting systems and procurement and all of that stuff is so difficult. So for them to run around and collect all these nuts in a landmass, I mean, try to do that in Texas, let alone 3 of them, right? So that would just destroy the profit, not to mention cracking these things. So it comes in a a fruit body. There's a fruit on the outside. There's a very hard shell. And then there's one nut. One. So you have to pick up that nut. You have to bring that nut back. And it's heavy. And you have to crack it open. And they have to do it by hand. And then they have to take the one little nut, put it in a sack, and it's got to be enough per kilo for it to make sense.
Wow.
So it's a very, very, very inefficient process. So what we did is we came in and said, listen, you collect what has naturally fallen. We'll give you a fair wage, which we figured out what was fair in all of the regions that made them excited to do it. We then spent time, money, and resources to create a technology that hasn't existed to crack the nuts efficiently, so they're not having to do it by hand and getting carpal tunnel and whatever else. And then we figured out and bought trucks and collecting systems, and we came in and bought a facility. So indigenously, it was still such a premium that people within the inners of Brazil couldn't afford it. Right. So a few people knew about it, but literally when we came in, almost all of the suppliers who had ever been in this were about to shut their door because there was no way to, even in the country, to make it sustainable. And if that door would be shut, that means that more and more of those trees become less and less valuable in terms of those people needing to put food in the mouths of their children. So thereby the unsustainable cattle grazing and the unsustainable growing of corn and soy. So
you've really gone all in on this, man. Like you're about as all in as you can. Yeah.
It's all in. And I brought in friends and colleagues and partners that are just got we agreed. Like there's no way we're going to do this without the foundation of it good. It's got to be good for the environment, period. Our goal is to plant 20 million trees of replanting, giving them back to the people so they can replant that which is indigenous to their community, buy up everything that they want to collect for their lifetime, and bring that attention back to ways that we need to. So yeah, we're all in. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and, hadn't even sold any, because of responses like you've had, because of the research we've done, because of the time on the ground, we go, this is worth it. And the people eating it will definitely find this worth it. So, it's a fun thing, but it's a lot of work. And, but at the end of the day, anything fast usually runs out fast. So we're building it.
Yeah. And I think you've discovered a beautiful side benefit too. So your company recently sent me a sample of I don't know if you're calling it granola, I guess you're like, is that what?
Yeah. Like a trail mix or granola.
Dude, it's amazing. Yeah. Like the fruit of the Baruka my kids loved it. Tell me about the nutrient profile. Yeah. Because that honestly was one of the best tasting things I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, thank you. It was funny how that whole thing went down. So when we were running around all these communities and seeing where the Vortator tree was and where the fruit fell, and we would gather a bunch of fruit and take it with us in the cars and then go to the next area, we then met our now partner down there, and he was like, let me go get one of these fruits that I've had for over 5 years. And so he brought it out, and I looked at the ones we just collected, and I literally saw no physical change. So the fruit on the outside didn't break down, like at all. And I'm like, how is it that this fruit on the outside, of course it's hard and it's not like a peach or something, but it's not breaking down. So there has to be some very strong nutrients. There has to be vitamin C, vitamin A, antioxidants, fiber, all of these things. And of course, once we tested it, more micronutrients, more antioxidants, more vitamins and minerals. So it was like, and then the taste, once we just dehydrate it, I shaved it in the car on our 9-hour drive back. I shaved some, I put it in a bag, I brought it back to the States. We had it tested, and we're like, oh my God, there's a whole other economy.
Yeah,
there's a whole other delivery system of nutrients, and the blending, the alchemy of blending them together is kind of mind blowing. So that's how it went down.
You lucked out, man. Honestly, it seems like it's the most perfect scenario. You got an amazing nut. You got an amazing fruit. Man, good for you. Like you certainly hit the, hopefully it's sustainable, right? Obviously you've looked into that at some level, and it grows pretty seasonally.
Oh yeah. Here's the thing. A business like this, to have it be 100% wild collected, that's an incredible thing. We're not getting wild food anymore. So on a mass level, to be able to still eat wild food, that's pretty incredible. So yeah, we're stoked, man. And it's just one of those things, I couldn't let it go. So we had to build a business out of it.
Now the real question, Darin, is how do I get a lifetime supply of Barukas?
Exactly. Well, let's talk about that, because the undertone of my even wanting the business to flourish is I want to eat these for the rest of my life. So
yeah,
if
we'll keep it going, man.
Yeah,
it's the type of thing you just got to get into people's hands, right? And I saw you guys had the individual serve packs now. Once people try it, I mean, it blows peanuts out of the water, blows almonds out of the water, better texture, better flavor. I mean, it's amazing. So. And lower calories, right?
Exactly. Without the mycotoxins and all of the anti-nutrients that certainly peanuts and other things have. So it's a no-brainer for sure.
Awesome, man. Where can people find Barukas? Where can people find you? And are you doing any more searching, or are you going all in on this thing?
I am, but I'm connected to a lot of things right now, but I have a great team. So I have a project that I can't quite talk about right now that I'm leaving tomorrow. So for the next 3 months, I go to 7 countries. So we're diving in on a bunch of stuff. And then, so barukas.com, barukas.com, or Amazon. It's on Amazon. And then currently I'm at superlife.com. And I'm redoing that website here for the next year. So that should be exciting. We're going to have a lot of new and exciting information on that. And yeah, you can find me on social media at SuperLife Living.
Can we access that fresh spirulina you're talking about, or is that still kind of exploratory? Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just tell you, it's this company. I've met the owners. I get nothing for it. It's a SP2, I think it's called. So go check it out. And then there's a lot of great research they're doing on that.
Now, the one thing I want to finish with, one thing you brought up, and I put it in the back of my mind, is you said you know too much about coffee. What are the negative drawbacks about coffee that maybe we shouldn't be drinking it?
Yeah, this is a big conversation. Let me just say that so I've been involved in a stem cell project for the last 3 years, and we're just finalizing to make some big moves in the space based on about 50 patents. And what we found so far, and just preliminary lifestyle sides of certain stem cells, that certainly coffee and some other types of caffeine, we haven't identified all of them yet, that seriously disrupt and kill beneficial stem cells. So that's that. So
it's caffeine itself, or it's the coffee?
That's the thing. We're not exactly sure, because, for example, green tea with the ECGCs, right? So the active compounds of the ECGCs within and the catechins of green tea also promote stem cells. So this is one of the things that we're following up with research. But we do know that alcohol and caffeine have a detrimental effect on stem cells. So if you're trying to repair, if you're trying to do some of these things, and if you're certainly going in to stem cell treatments, you want to do a serious overhaul of what your body's prepared to receive. So cutting back and taking out for at least a month the caffeine, just to be safe, caffeine totally and alcohol totally.
And ramping up the blueberries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another project that's going to be coming online here next year. And
cool, man. Well, let me know when it's ready to go. I'd love to hear about it, because stem cells is definitely an area of fascination. I've interviewed a few people on stem cells, and obviously in the fitness and longevity space that's where we want to be, right?
Yeah.
Darin, thank you so much for your time, man. And we will link to everything, all these websites in the show notes. I'm going to take you up on hitting you up when I get out there to Malibu, man. I'm out there next month, so I'm going to bug you and come swim with you in Laird.
Absolutely. Just don't say I didn't warn you.
Oh, no, dude, I'm ready. I'm ready. Have a great one, man. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Join us on benpokulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pokulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.